Good afternoon, folks. This is Robert Chappell, Executive Editor at Madison365 with your daily update for Friday, March 19th. The update today is brought to you by Reach Dane, local nonprofit. For more than 51 years, Reach Dane has remained a leader in high-quality early childhood education and comprehensive family services in Dane County and Greene County. The families they serve have at least one child under the age of 5 and live at or below the federal poverty line. Nearly 30% of these families struggle with homelessness. Without their daily necessities met, these children cannot really absorb education or build essential skills. It's very difficult to learn when you're hungry and worried about where you're going to sleep and, all those kinds of things. Reach Dane provides wraparound services to help meet those needs, such as mental health, meals, and transportation to help lay that foundation. They're now enrolling for the fall and immediate care. So if you need care now, or if you're going to need care in the fall when school starts up again, go to reachdane.org. And if you are in a position to support these important programs, go to reachdane.org and donate. So we're gonna get to some news first, and then we'll do it backwards today. We'll do the news first, and we'll do COVID after the break. Because the news today is a little grim, actually. This is a story that I have been working on for a couple of months because this is the kind of story that takes that long to do. If you've seen it on the website, you know what I'm talking about, but it is this is Jimmy Joshua is this guy's name, and he is currently incarcerated at the Dane County Jail. And back on December 23rd, he was arrested in August. He's being held on a probation hold while he awaits trial on a handful of charges in fraud and battery and disorderly conduct. He was in the jail, and on December 23rd, he's in the COVID wing or area, whatever, because he was tested positive for COVID-19. So as a result of that, he was kind of in the segregated unit, and each inmate gets an hour out of their cell at a time. And he had gone over his hour. He acknowledges that. Deputy came and asked him to, didn't really ask nicely, but told him to go back in and lock down. And he kind of talked back a little bit, and he took exception to the tone, basically, that the deputy was speaking in a disrespectful manner. So I'm going to show you a video clip. It might be a little upsetting. It's not terribly graphic because what happens at the end is off, kind of out of frame. But he did receive a pretty serious injury in this clip. But I want to show you the clip because it adds important context. And this clip is also embedded in the story at Madison365.org, and you can see the entire clip. This is just a 2-minute clip out of a 30-minute video, but just for for clarity, I'm going to kind of show you this. This is Jimmy here. I'll do this way. Oops. And you can see he's being asked to lock down. There's other inmates in those cells. There's other cells kind of around that sort of pod area. You can see the deputy looking at his watch, seeming to indicate, you've been out here long enough. I'll just let this run for a minute. Obviously an animated exchange, but I don't know about you, but I'm not seeing any really threatening gestures or anything. Pretty soon we'll start to see it around the corner as Jimmy goes back toward his cell where he was supposed to be. This video did not come with sound, so you don't have to if you try to adjust your sound settings. And see them both talking to other people that are off camera here. And you can see the deputies listening and asking him to go back into the cell, and he's, has kind of had enough now. And you see Jimmy now is backing up toward his cell. That's his cell there on the right. He's turning to go into the cell, and now, for some reason, the deputy grabs his arm. Now he's in the cell where he's supposed to be, right? And now 2 more deputies will appear and remove him from the cell. So you can see there that he's taken violently to the floor, obviously deliberately. You can, if you watch it again, you can see the deputy on Jimmy's right, on his left, grab his left leg and pick it up and push him down. And he did that with those other 2 deputies kind of on top of him. He says, I've talked to him many times in the past couple of months, and he says that he could tell right away that he was badly injured. And it turns out that his hip was, like the bone was dislocated from his hip, and his hip was fractured. If you continue to watch that video, if you watch the entire 30-minute video, there are 3 or 4 more deputies who come in to kind of hold him down. A nurse comes to check on him. He says the nurse said, "You're fine." But without audio, we don't know that. But what we do know is there's more video from another cell that once they got him up into a chair, he expressed feeling and thoughts of self-harm. I'm not sure, and he wasn't able to really explain to me why he thought that, other than he was just really, really upset, in a great deal of pain and in shock. So he was taken to another area where he could be put in a sort of a suicide watch cell. And there's video from that cell as well. And I'm not going to show you that because it's really, really upsetting. But I do have it linked in the story if you really want to see it. But I have an hour and 40 minutes of him in that cell, and they managed to get him onto a mat and cut off his clothes and left him there naked. Now, on suicide watch, it kind of give you like a smock thing without any real clothes, because you could fashion, your clothes into something that could hurt yourself. So that makes a little bit of sense. But took him, about an hour into that, he was able to kind of prop himself up and bang on the window to try to get some attention. On 2 occasions, deputies came in with full tactical gear on, with shields and everything, to hold him down. The first time they were trying to get him into a chair for some reason. It's not clear why they were doing that. But the second time they came in, a nurse came in and just checked his temperature. Did not check his hip at all. And this is the part that really gets me. This is about 7:00 p.m. that this injury takes place, a little before 7. He was not taken to the hospital. He's had a broken hip, a dislocated and fractured, and he was not taken to the hospital for another 15 or 16 hours. They were giving him water through the little flap under the door. He couldn't reach the water. He couldn't get to it. And he couldn't get to the toilet. He could not move off of that bench. So you can imagine what happened over the course of the night. The jail has these tablets that you can use to message loved ones and do like video calls, like a video visit. No visitors allowed in the jail right now because of COVID, so they have these tablets that you can do a video call. And Jimmy's fiance, Allison, who was the first who actually contacted me a couple months ago about this story, is used to getting messages from Jimmy in the morning, like a good morning type text message. And she didn't get one on the 24th, so she was concerned. So she called to initiate a video visit, and somebody else on that floor picked up and told her what had happened. And Jimmy was like yelling, like, tell her I can't come, I can't get up, tell her what's happening. So then she called the jail, and then after that, another nurse and deputy went to check on Jimmy. And that nurse, which is a different nurse from the night before, this is a new nurse, actually took him and realized that he was seriously injured and managed to get him to, he had to prop himself up, like kneel backwards on a wheelchair because he couldn't sit. And they got him down to the jail health area, medical area in the jail, and tried to get an x-ray, but they couldn't because he couldn't move his leg enough to position himself properly for the jail's x-ray machine. So it was determined he had to go to the hospital. We have medical records that indicate he arrived at the emergency department at UW Hospital at 11:07 a.m., 16 hours after the injury took place. He was immediately, it was pretty much immediately determined that surgery would be recommended, and surgery was performed later that night. He had a plate and 8 screws put into his pelvis, and he stayed at the hospital for 8 days. Since then, he's filed a number of grievances and complaints, and there's been no recourse. He's been in for a long time. He was in kind of like an isolation cell because they don't have really a medical ward or an infirmary or anything. So they had to kind of put him in the segregation cell because he was in no shape to be in the general population. But he's finally now back in general population, and he's filed his complaints and grievances to no avail, and now he has filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. In the federal court, there's a specific kind of case you can file as a prisoner civil rights. He does not have an attorney, but he's filed it himself, seeking $2.5 million in damages to cover. There's going to be ongoing medical costs. He has nerve damage, physical therapy, everything like that. So now in January, January 19th, the day after Sheriff Dave Mahoney announced he was going to retire, Allison, his fiance, got a hold of the sheriff through Facebook Messenger, and the sheriff said, "I'll look into this." A month later, she followed up, and he said, I passed the information on to the jail staff, and they checked on him. That was the last we've heard from Sheriff Mahoney. I emailed the sheriff yesterday at noon with a list of questions, including, can you verify the identity of the deputies that were involved? Because Jimmy told me the names of all those deputies, but I'm not going to say those names because I don't have them confirmed by the sheriff's office, and it's really hard to confirm anybody when they got masks on anyway. So I don't want to name a name that might be wrong, right? So I asked to verify those. I asked them for the disciplinary records of those deputies. I asked why, once he was in his cell, why did he just leave him in the cell? Write him up for being mouthy, write him up for refusing to go in, but why, once he's in there, just leave him? Why I'm not trying to say that, but why wouldn't you just leave him? Why would you even do this altercation once he's in a cell? Has there been any disciplinary action based on this? What are the policies that govern this kind of thing when somebody is injured by a guard, accidentally or purposefully, doesn't matter? Is it normal to leave somebody like that for that period of time? So about 4 hours, and also mentioned there's a federal lawsuit. Are you aware of that? And what's your response to that lawsuit? About 4 hours later, this is about noon that I emailed them. At 4 o'clock, I got a call from an attorney. Said he was representing the county sheriff's office, and that there's a lot of inaccuracies in the story. So, being a good reporter, I want to report accurately. So I asked him what specifically is inaccurate, and he couldn't say. Partly he said because there's active litigation, so I can't really comment. But he also said, I haven't seen the video, I haven't read the complaint, I don't know anything about it. So I said, how do you know there's inaccuracies? And I said, when were you retained? And he said, a couple hours ago. So I emailed the sheriff's office. They got a lawyer, and he called me. Now, I also got a comment from the ACLU of Wisconsin, the American Civil Liberties Union, who said that the Eighth Amendment to the United States Constitution prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. And depending on the situation, they couldn't comment on this case, obviously, without knowing anything. I know. They're gaslighting me. I know. They're not going to say anything. They're not going to admit. But the ACLU said that if that there's a duty and a requirement to provide medical care if there's an injury that's serious or very, very painful. So depending on the situation, depending on how painful it was, depending on how much, if it could be determined that getting to the hospital sooner, maybe he could have avoided surgery or something, along those lines. Like that could be a violation of the Eighth Amendment. Medical records don't say anything like that, but it was the medical records do say that the doctors could tell that his hip had been dislocated for quite a while, which I have to assume would make it more serious. So that is that story. We will continue to follow up. Like I said, if you want to go look at the story, it's there now, Madison365.org. It's got some photos. It's got the video. It's got both clips of the video, including that clip I just showed you, plus clip from inside the other cell, which is really upsetting to look at, and I wouldn't recommend it. But if you want to see the evidence I'm talking about, and I also have links to the full videos, so you can see that I'm not clipping anything out that's really important. I'm just showing you the important parts. So that's that story. We'll let you know if anything comes of it. I haven't heard from any county supervisors or anything like that, or any other advocates, but we will continue to follow that story as we go. Couple other notes that are of slightly better, slightly better news. Oops, that's the wrong thing. Sorry. Where did my slides go now? The community in Madison last night came out for Asian Americans. As we know, on Tuesday, there was a white 21-year-old man who shot and killed 8 people, 6 of them Asian women. The authorities in Atlanta have gone out of their way to say this is, they're not sure this is racially motivated. I don't know how you could come to any other conclusion. After a full year of increasing violence and racism against Asian American people, because certain people in our leadership of our country blamed coronavirus on China, which then gets conflated with all Asian people. So the several hundred people came out last night in support of Asian American people and opposed to racism and violence against Asian American people. Our reporter Aomi Wolf was there. She's terrific. She forgot her camera, but ran into Fatimata Cisse, who you might remember was a reporter of ours, and a reporter and photographer of ours, who has gone on to work for NBC News, who happened to be there and took some pictures for us and very generously shared some terrific photos from that event. If you look at Madison365.org right now, you can see the story on the event, as well as some terrific photography. Speaking of Fatimata, this is a great story. This is Nabil Hamdan. He is the son of Fabiola Hamdan, who's a local community leader. And she's just one of those community people that has kind of her hands in everything. She's on every committee, But her son, Nabil, when he was 14, he started this company called World of Bamboo. And his business basically tries to replace everything you use that's plastic with bamboo, because bamboo is a really renewable resource. It grows really fast. It's relatively cheap to grow. And it's biodegradable. It doesn't pollute the earth as much. So he started with straws, and now you can get toothbrushes and like plastic, like forks and knives, and like plastic picnic silverware made out of bamboo. And he's sold most of the stuff like at community fairs and businesses, like business expos and things like that. Well, Fashibata, working member, I mentioned she works for NBC News. She was on the team producing a Today Show segment about young people entrepreneurs, like kid entrepreneurs, and said, "Oh, I used to work for Madison365, and we did a story on this kid, Nabil Hamdan. How about him?" And so then a couple emails and phone calls later, Nabil Hamdan was on the Today Show yesterday, and his business got like 500 new orders in the 2 hours after the show aired, which he said like the most he's ever gotten at one time was like he got 20 orders from an Instagram ad. And right after that show aired, he got 500 orders. He has to try to fill them. Yes, he is an amazing young man, Peggy. I agree. So if you go to Madison365.org, find that story, you can actually watch the segment. There's a business that's like these kids that make awesome like kid socks. I love it. And another kid who makes bath bombs, and then Namdan who makes Nabil, sorry, who makes these bamboo straws. It's a very fun story. And I just love that we had a connection. We didn't even know about that connection, to be honest with you. Like, we heard from Fabiola, his mom, that this was happening, that he's going to be on the Today Show. So, of course, our editor, Dave, went and did the story. And then after we posted the story, Fatima texted me and said, "Hey, I made that happen," because I knew about him from Madison365. So, really fun. A lot of, just when things connect like that, it's really fun. In national news, Derek Chauvin is on trial for the murder of George Floyd. As you know, the city of Minneapolis recently reached a settlement with the family of George Floyd, a $27 million settlement. And as a result of that, the defense, Derek Chauvin's lawyers, asked to move the trial, to delay it and move it so that the news of that settlement wouldn't taint the jury pool. The judge said no. The judge said, "We are going forward. We've got the jury seated, and we're going to go forward with this trial next week." He faces charges of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and manslaughter in the death of George Floyd. That's the news. It was a bit long because of that one story. So we'll take a short pause, and we'll come back and we'll talk about COVID, where the news is kind of a mixed bag. More good than bad. We'll say that. More good than bad. We will be right back right after this. If you didn't know that we have job listings on our site, you do now. That's from earlier. That's from Tuesday, and I just forgot to put it up until today to put it on this show. So Madison365.org/jobs. I think there have been 5 or 6 jobs added even since then, since Tuesday. So there's always something new, and there are employers that are specifically looking for diverse talent. So if diversity in the workplace is important to you, those are good employers to look for. And if you are hiring and want to make sure that you have a diverse talent pool to work from, go to Madison365.org/jobs. You click submit a job, and it's very easy. You can pay right through there, and it's no problem. And it's really simple to do. So let's talk COVID. The COVID news, like I said, is kind of a mixed bag today. The news is not bad. The steady decline in cases that we've seen since, basically this whole throughout 2021 has kind of leveled off. Now it's leveled off at a very low place, right? So at least the 7-day case count that is now 2.2%. We've always wanted that to be below 3. So if that like levels off at 6.5%, I'd be upset. I'd be concerned, but it didn't. It got all the way down, well below 3, all the way down to 2.0, and has now ticked up slightly to 2.2. It's been at 2.2 for the past 3 consecutive days. So it's leveled off, but it's leveled off at a good place. Again, that's 2.2% of all tests in the past 7 days are positive. Now, in terms of case numbers, we're still on the high-ish side. We had almost 2,900 new tests today. I'm sorry, almost 2,300 new tests. Sorry about that. With 390 new cases. But 17% of those new tests were positive. But that drops our daily average of new positives from 410 down to 387. So a little dip there. Still, I would like to see it continue to go down a little faster than that. Also, I will say that our active cases, the cases that are currently active, also steady for the past 3 days. That's a number that had been going down. That's one of the other numbers that's been going down every day for 3 months. And now it's leveled off for 3 days. So again, it's just a little plateau. It'll probably continue to go down. And it will probably continue to go down because vaccines are accelerating incredibly. Like today was the biggest day of vaccines I've seen. It's quite remarkable. To Paul's question, I don't know if you caught the first part of the show, Paul. You might have to go back and watch it, but the Dane County Sheriff's Office is kind of gaslighting us. I mean, they're declining to comment on a particularly egregious case, which that's what they do. That's what they're going to do. That's always what they're going to do. Okay, back to COVID. Now, the vaccinations, we had more than 50,000 people finish their vaccine in the past 24 hours. It is my belief that a good chunk of those must be that Johnson & Johnson shot, that single dose, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that single dose shot. We surged past 800,000 people. In fact, we've surged past 811,000 people who finished their vaccines, who are fully vaccinated, not fully immune yet. You don't have your immunity built up for about 2 weeks after you complete your series. Okay. So don't burn the mask as soon as you get the second shot, right? Your body takes a couple weeks to respond to the vaccine. The vaccine doesn't make you immune. It's your body's response to the vaccine that does. Remember that. And that response takes a couple of weeks. Okay. So that's 811,000 people, nearly 14%. That's almost a full percentage point. We were at 13.0 yesterday. Now we're at 13.9%. Of the entire population of Wisconsin is vaccinated. That's great. We also had 44,000 people get their first shot. And again, some of those 44,000 people, it's the first and last shot because it's just the one shot. But some of those 44,000 people, it's the first of the 2 doses of the Pfizer or the Moderna. We'll also say we've administered more than 2.2 million shots to nearly 1.4 million people. So that's really good news. If that continues, if we continue to see 50,000 people a day, we might get to, as the DHS projected yesterday, we might get to 80% by July. Now, they made that, DHS said yesterday, we can get to 80% by July based on the supply of the vaccine and the available appointments. There's more to it than that, right? Having vaccine available is one thing. Getting it to the people is another thing. And there's a lot of people who have barriers to access, who have jobs where they can't get off to go to 2 appointments, where they have language barriers, where they don't trust the vaccine, where they don't have insurance or don't know that it's okay that they don't have insurance, right? There's a lot of information we have to get to people. So the fact that we have enough vaccine to get 80% done by July doesn't necessarily mean we'll be done with 80% by July. There's a lot of work to do to get into those neighborhoods, to get to the rural areas, and the state is working on that. They're putting some money behind that effort. And we might actually be involved in some of those efforts. So we'll see how that goes. But with all that caveat, with all that grains of salt, the fact that we got 50,000 people finished in one day, I'll take it. We're moving forward. That's what we want to see. Yeah. Don't bring the mask either way. Masking will be around for a while. What's interesting? What I was thinking about the other day. This is kind of a tangent, but there have been virtually zero flu cases this year, which tells you two things. Number one, masking and distancing work. Right? If masking and distancing didn't work, we'd still see flu, influenza, just like every other year. The other thing it tells you is that these measures that we've taken, masking and distancing, have eliminated flu, but we're still getting 400 new cases of COVID every day. That tells you that COVID is not the flu, right? It's far more virulent, far more contagious, far stronger than the flu. So if these relatively simple measures we've taken, and there hasn't, the compliance we know hasn't been great, and a lot of people aren't wearing masks and are going to bars and stuff like that, even the relatively sort of half measures that we've taken have eliminated influenza, and we're still getting 400 new cases of COVID every day. What's that say about COVID? Oh, right? Which is why we have to continue to be vigilant, because as Max mentions, there are new variants that could take hold before we get to that 80%. We could have a simultaneously busting our behinds to get everybody vaccinated while also seeing a spike in cases because of one of these variants. Now, the variants, we did find out yesterday, there has been a slight increase in the UK variant in Wisconsin. There are now 55 identified cases. A couple days ago, it was 31. There were 24 new cases out of about 600 tests, so about 9% of, that's not right, about 4%, I should say, of those cases that were tested were of the UK variant, which is kind of a lot. I mean, it's nothing to panic about yet, but it's more than I would have expected. We've only seen one case of the South Africa variant and 0 of the Brazil variant so far. But it's there. It's really happening. So, yeah, Max has another good point too, that he went to get an appointment. It was Johnson at Alliant. Who knows how you get assigned to which one? I think the state and the county and the tribes and lots of other entities are doing things kind of in different ways. The healthcare providers are doing things different ways, so it's hard to tell. I don't know if you get to choose your own vaccine or not. I don't know, to be honest with you. I'll find out pretty soon. I'll be eligible before too long. Okay, that is what I have today. It's been long. It's been a long one today. I appreciate you sticking with me. We'll have more updates on Monday. I'll update you on the jail story as well as the COVID numbers over the course of the weekend. We'll be back. This is a great question, Rachel. I appreciate it. A relatively small number because they have to sequence the genome of each of these tests. So it's a relatively small percent of cases. It was about 600 cases over the past week that were sequenced or that were reported, and that's let's see how many new cases were there over the course of the last week. About 2,000, give or take, about 2,000, maybe 2,400 cases over the past week, of which 600 were sequenced genomically. So what's that? About 1 out of 4. And to be honest with you, I believe they're randomly chosen. I do not know that for sure. But of the 25% of cases that were genomically sequenced, about 4% came back with that UK variant. So Again, not so if that's, let's say that's generalizable. So like of today's 390 cases, maybe about 10 are UK variant. So, nothing to panic about, but you could see if we're not careful how that could get out of control pretty quickly if we're not careful. So we have to continue to be careful, continue to be vigilant. Don't be tempted to leave your mask at home. It's beautiful outside. Be outside, but be at a distance, and keep your mask on when you're around people. So that is that. That's the news for today. I appreciate your attention once again. Have a wonderful weekend. It's going to be beautiful. I will be growing out, I'm sure. I hope you do too. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you back here Monday.
This is 365 Media.